A few chances for showers this early afternoon, but then we are going to dry out, have a mostly sunny day, highs in the low 80s. Right now we have 74 degrees at O'Hare.
You're listening to WBEZ HD Chicago 91.5 FM, WBEQ HD Morris 90.7 FM, WBEK Kankakee 91.1 FM, and anytime on the WBEZ app.
You're listening to Reset. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. Coming up on the show, back to school week takes a violent turn after a drive-by shooting on the city's northwest side. Testimony continues in R. Kelly's Chicago trial. And do they have your attention now? The Chicago Sky advanced to the WNBA semifinals. Those stories and more in our weekly news recap. You can listen on the radio, of course, and now watch us on WBEZ's YouTube and Facebook pages. Seriously, go check it out. It's all happening right after the latest news from around the country.
From NPR News, I'm Janine Herbst. The Justice Department has released a redacted version of the affidavit it used to win court approval for the FBI's August 8th search of former President Donald Trump's Florida home. According to the affidavit, classified documents related to national defense were found among 15 boxes that the National Archives had obtained from Mar-a-Lago earlier in the year. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has pledged to keep raising interest rates until he and his colleagues are confident that inflation is under control. NPR's Scott Horsley reports Powell delivered a forceful message at an economic conference in Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Powell says the central bank has an unconditional responsibility to get inflation under control. He says Fed policymakers will keep raising interest rates until that's accomplished, even if that results in some short-term hardship, such as slower economic growth and higher unemployment.
These are the unfortunate costs of reducing inflation. But a failure to restore price stability would mean far greater pain.
New numbers from the Commerce Department show that inflation eased somewhat in July. Powell called that a welcome development, but warned it'll take more than 1 month of improving price data to show that inflation is coming down. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
And that news has the Dow down more than 600 points at last check. President Biden today marked the anniversary of an attack on Kabul airport last year that left 13 American service members and more than 160 civilians dead. NPR's Eric McDaniel has more.
The attack targeted Abbey Gate, an entrance to the airport in Afghanistan's capital city, as thousands of people crowded nearby, trying to flee the country during the frenzied withdrawal of U.S. and coalition troops. It was among the deadliest attacks on U.S. troops in a 2-decade-long war, one in which 2,400 American soldiers and an estimated 46,000 civilians lost their lives. The attack spurred widespread criticism of the Biden administration's chaotic evacuation, and John Kirby, the National Security Council spokesman, told NPR that no military operation is flawless. The administration has promised a full accounting of what went wrong. Those reports are still not complete. Eric McDaniel, NPR News, the White House.
A judge yesterday again blocked a trigger law banning abortion in North Dakota as he weighs arguments from the state's lone abortion clinic that the law violates the state constitution. NPR's Sarah McCammon has more.
The decision blocking North Dakota's abortion ban comes as 3 other states have seen their trigger bans take effect this week. Texas, Tennessee, and Idaho all had state laws take effect on Thursday that make providing an abortion a felony in most or all cases. And this is part of a larger trend nationwide.
NPR Sarah McCammon reporting. Wall Street is trading lower. The Dow is down 622 points. The NASDAQ is down 321. The S&P 500 down 88. You're listening to NPR News.
Right now it's 74 degrees under partly sunny skies at 12:04. Good afternoon. I'm Claire Lane with WBEZ News. The Field Museum is debuting an exhibit highlighting a scientist who is a person of color today. The inaugural Changing Face of Science exhibit highlights Lanika Stroger, a black woman who worked in the museum's DNA lab. Stroger died in 2020 from COVID complications. Museum curators hope her story will inspire young marginalized people who want to break into the sciences. And a former R. Kelly girlfriend wept on the witness stand as she testified that a Kelly business manager told her in 2007 she should have been killed for causing the R&B star so much trouble. She told jurors on Wednesday that she angered Kelly and his associate by stealing a video from a duffel bag full of recordings of Kelly having sex with women and girls. Prosecution witness Lisa Van Allen said she rummaged through the bag on a rare occasion when Kelly left it unattended. Van Allen also testified at Kelly's 2008 trial, at which he was acquitted. Looking at sports, the Cubs are in Milwaukee taking on the Brewers tonight. The White Sox are here hosting the Diamondbacks all weekend. First pitch on the south side tonight is at 7:10. And the Sky are gearing up for Game 1 of the second round of the WNBA playoffs. They are hosting the Sun. This is on Sunday at 7 o'clock at Wintrust Arena. I'm Claire Lane. This is WBEZ News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments, wealth management from dedicated advisors that tailor portfolios to each client's unique goals. More at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
This is Reset. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. Coming up this hour, an investigation from Chalk Beach, Chicago looked into the push to strengthen career and technical education in schools and the barriers that exist with this effort. So we'll talk to the reporter behind the story about what that push looks like here in Chicago. But first, it is time for our weekly news recap, where we dig deeper into the biggest headlines of the week. Stories like these.
More than 1,200 students across Chicago public schools don't have bus transportation to get to school.
Mayor Lightfoot says a new campaign ad deliberately darkened her skin to try to scare voters. Authorities say 3 juveniles and 1 adult have been shot near a high school in Chicago's Northwest Side.
Class is back in session for CPS students 2 weeks earlier than usual.
So many stories to dive into, so let's get started. Joining us today is Carrie Shepard, lead producer of the daily podcast and newsletter, CityCast Chicago. Welcome back to Reset, Carrie.
Thanks, Sasha. Glad to be here.
Also with us, Brandon Pope, host of the news magazine show On the Block, co-produced by Block Club Chicago and airing on WCIU Channel 26. Welcome back, Brandon.
What it do? Good to see you.
And WBEZ criminal justice reporter Patrick Smith. Hey, Pat.
Hey, Sasha.
I want to give a special shout out to the folks who are watching us break down the week's news live right now on WBEZ's Facebook and on WBEZ's YouTube pages. You can also watch the live stream on Reset's Facebook page. And thank you. Carrie, I'm going to start with you. Hundreds of thousands of Illinois students headed back to school this week. For Chicago students, it was the earliest start in recent memory. CityCast interviewed Chicago Teachers Union President Stacy Davis Gates this week as well. How did she say that things were going?
She said that we obviously talked to her about COVID safety precautions, and she was quite clear what we already know, that, last year the negotiations for teachers' safety and staff safety, the negotiations were quite intense. She feels that they got to a good place, and for protections, obviously it's a different landscape. We have vaccines and medications now. But Stacy Davis Gates, I feel like we're often seeing her on the defensive in the media, but True. It is, it's just it's so refreshing to hear her talk. Like the first question that Jacoby asked was what she remembers about her first day as a teacher in Inglewood. And it was great, and she's like, I wasn't prepared, I thought I knew everything, but like meeting the students was so different. And something else she said that I thought was really, really important is that the Chicago Teachers Union, it's not just about labor. We're your neighbors. We live here. The CTU is connected to all parts of the city, and that is really important, and they should have a voice on many parts of the city, not just education.
Well, we know that the safety measures are scaled back a bit this year. Did she say anything about how teachers were feeling about that?
She didn't. If she did, maybe it got edited out. I didn't cut it. But
well, if we had to imagine how teachers would be feeling about COVID safety measures being scaled back, gang, what would they say?
Well, I think it probably would depend on which teacher you asked.
Yeah.
I mean, based on the movements of last year, teachers were very invested in as much COVID precautions, as much COVID safety as they could have. I don't imagine their feelings have changed. Although, if you look around you, it seems like most people have kind of decided that they're just over this.
Well, I know from a parent perspective, I'm worried.
I was just gonna say,
I've got one that's leaving the house every day with her mask on, like tight, across her face, and the other that's like, bye.
I mean, cases are still spiking right now. Since August 12th, the Illinois Department of Health has reported, I think, more than 15,000 cases so far, with 56 deaths. So COVID's still an issue we got to worry about.
Absolutely.
Well, Stacy Davis Gates, she also ruled out a run for mayor, didn't she?
She did at the City Club, actually. Yeah, on Monday she said that. She made it clear that there needs to be change on the 5th floor. She said, I'm not the only one who feels like that. But yeah, the change is not going to be her. I think she's really eager to. This is the start of her tenure as the president. So it sounds like she's really fired up to take on that role and not run for mayor. Because who wants to do that?
Who wants to do that? It's a big job.
Her stepping back really intrigues me because, the thought process was, the CTU vote's going to go automatically to her. Well, now it's like, who is it going to go to now? And there's talk about Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson, who currently works for CTU, getting that backing if he throws his hat in the ring. So
and he was
interesting to watch.
He was standing next to her, right, at City Club? So.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, well, switching the tone here, still talking about back to school, there was some sad and alarming news this first week, Patrick. Violence broke out near a Northwest school. Give us the details.
Yeah, 4 teenagers were shot in a drive-by shooting outside of Schurz High School near Milwaukee and Addison, right at the corner of Milwaukee and Addison. It, according to police reports and reporting, it was a drive-by shooting. I think a black Mercedes is what I've seen described, and they fired from the car into just a group of people, most of them students. As we mentioned, 4 teenagers were shot. 3 of them were students. 2 of them students at Schurz, one of them at a different school. Yeah. One of them was critically injured in the shooting. Fortunately, all survived, at least so far. So we're still, no one's been arrested in that yet. We'll just be following the status of the victims.
Everyone's still recovering.
Yeah.
2 years ago, local school councils were given the power to actually get rid of on-campus police officers. Where did Schurz come down on that?
Yeah, so in the past 2 years, the number of officers who have been working in schools has gone down by about a third, and the LSC at Schurz voted to remove both of its on-campus police officers last year. I think that's an important thing to be tracking. BEZ and the Sun-Times did some really good reporting back in June about what the impact has been. Yeah. I will say, in this particular incident, I don't know that on-campus, I don't know what on-campus police would do to prevent a drive-by shooting that happened just off-campus.
Across the street at a nice job.
And I don't say that to say that
of course,
we should have campus police officers or we shouldn't, just that I'm not sure that this incident really is evidence for either side.
Yeah, good point. Brandon, some Chicago public school students, though, they're still having busing issues.
Yeah, this is a problem. So busing issues have been a problem for CPS for years. Right now, special needs students are the big problem here. There's about 1,200 students right now impacted. CPS CEO Peter Martinez says about half of them will be able to get rerouted next week. But parents right now, they're dealing with the fact that their kids, the buses either aren't showing up, they're showing up late, or the times that they are promised. 90 minutes is the limit that CPS set for how long it's going to take back and forth for a special needs student to get to where they got to go. You're seeing some kids have 2-hour trips.
Oof, wow.
Yeah,
each way. Yeah.
Any kid having a 2-hour trip to school, that is wild, especially with
I
how
would stop
early
going
it
to school. I think.
This is what happens.
I know I'm joking, but that's a real problem.
That is what happens.
Yeah.
Sarah Karp, our friend and colleague Sarah Karp, education reporter, she's been reporting on this since last year, and she was on CityCast this morning, and she was saying she would get these attendance data and kids just stop going because if they don't have a ride. And also, can you imagine 2 hours how tired your kid would be by the time they got to school?
They got to wake up so early already.
Yes.
And the parents still got to make breakfast. So this is a really big problem for the district. CPS CEO Peter Martinez says it still is an improvement from last year where 3,000 students were not having any route. They promised they're going to have this resolved by September 6th or 7th, but school's already started,
September
right?
6th or 7th. That's that's bringing us into week 3.
So what they're doing right now, they're offering stipends to parents, monthly stipends of $500 to try to help them make travel accommodations. CEO Martinez blames this all on a shortage of bus drivers that's impacting not just Chicago, but around the country. They've tried to adjust and raise wages for bus drivers.
Right, they're giving them some more money. I think up to $20 an hour.
Exactly, but so far that's not made much of an impact here. So,
yikes.
Yeah.
This is Reset. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. We are going behind the headlines in the weekly news recap with WBEZ criminal justice reporter Patrick Smith, Carrie Shepard of CityCast Chicago, and Brandon Pope, who's host of On the Block, which airs on WCIU Channel 26. Sticking with you, Brandon, and turning to politics for a moment, Mayor Lightfoot took issue with a special campaign ad this week
Yeah, remember that O.J. Simpson Time magazine cover, the darkening issue? Mm-hmm. Lori Lightfoot's accusing this PAC called the People Who Play by the Rules PAC, pretty ironic.
Interesting.
Of creating an ad darkening
what
her
rules?
skin. Exactly.
What rules are you playing by?
Very interesting, right? So this PAC, this ad basically is one of those doom and gloom, Chicago's so bad. It starts with Mayor Lori Lightfoot at the City Club speech talking about Chicago's going to have a summer of joy. And they use a filter like most of those doom and gloom ads do. And yes, it does make her skin darker. Now, Dan Proft, he's a conservative radio host here in Chicago. He's the one that owns this PAC. He claims that these accusations by the mayor are preposterous.
He said it was, quote, insane.
Called her a racial hustler. Yeah.
Meanwhile, she's saying he's racist for doing this.
Exactly. Now, it's tough here. It's tough to give him the benefit of the doubt when you look at the optics of it all. So NBC News first reported this. But before they even reported it, Dan Proft's co-host, Amy Jacobson, actually asked a question of the mayor about this, almost like they were like getting in front of the issue, like they knew that this was going to be a problem, going to be a thing. So right there, the benefit of the doubt kind of goes away for me. But then you also have a mayor here who's been accused of being a person who cries wolf sometimes. And anytime she gets an attack, it's racist or homophobic without it being racist or homophobic. So it's pretty interesting to see. But she's talking about this being a racist dog whistle. The Pritzker campaign, meanwhile, is calling for Darren Bailey, who wasn't mentioned in the ad, but obviously this was an anti-Pritzker ad trying to prop up Bailey, calling on him to have this ad taken down. Bailey says he has not even worked with this PAC before.
Yeah. So. Your thoughts, Carrie, on this year's crop of campaign ads and political messages and Chicago being called a, quote, hellhole. It's just all of the things.
Yeah. Last time I was on Reset, we talked about Darren Bailey calling Chicago a hellhole. So
and he did it again.
Continues. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a Photoshop expert, but so I don't know what kind of filter, but it does definitely look darker. But whether or not
all you need to have is eyes.
Exactly. Right, and also all you need to have is ears, because this is not the first racist dog whistle that Darren Bailey has employed. So,
or Dan Proft. He's got a record too.
Yeah. So, and I would just add, like, Brandon, you made a good point about like the racist, homophobic, but I also say there's a lot of misogynistic attacks that go on as well. So it's gross, obviously. Yeah.
You think we're likely to see more of these in the coming months, Patrick?
Well, I am confused by Darren Bailey's, and I know that, because it's a PAC, he's not technically, I'm sure he wasn't involved in actually putting the ad together, but I'm confused by the strategy, the hellhole strategy. Yes. He seems to have decided to double down. I'm not a political strategist. I don't think you can win Illinois with just downstate, and so I'm confused. So I don't know. I guess
Brandon says no.
You can't. I mean,
you absolutely cannot.
You cannot.
So I'm not quite sure what the strategy there is to double down on this.
And they've yet to spend ad dollars in the Chicago TV market. Like, I don't see what the strategy is here.
We don't matter.
I mean, I guess it's a theory that Bailey's maybe thinks he can get folks in the collar counties, or but
the people who live around the hellhole.
Exactly. Who can work in the hellhole, but then they leave the hellhole. And they get out. Mm-hmm. Get out.
Well, Patrick, sticking with you, a former alderman with a familiar name headed to prison this week.
Yeah, that's right. Patrick Daley Thompson, grandson of Richard J. Daley, nephew of Richard M. He reported to federal prison in Wisconsin on Monday to start serving his 4-month sentence on convictions that he filed false tax returns and lied to regulators. He used to be the alderman representing the 11th Ward, which is Bridgeport, which is the not just Bridgeport, but includes Bridgeport, which is the longtime Daley home and where he lived as well. He should be out before Christmas if all goes according to plan.
Out before Christmas. Well, a Chicago cop allegedly involved in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol has refused a plea deal. Fill us in on the details there.
Yeah, this was reported by our colleague Chip Mitchell. Officer Carroll Cheswick, he's accused of breaching the U.S. Capitol, entering a senator's office during the insurrection on January 6th. According to the federal complaint against him, Cheswick texted selfies of himself to a friend inside the Capitol wearing a sweatshirt with the CPD logo on it, and texted, "We inside the Capitol, LMFAO." Allegedly. This is according to the complaint.
You throw that allegedly in there, please.
he was charged with, I think, 6 misdemeanors. He was offered a plea deal where he would plead guilty to just 1 and face a maximum of 6 months in prison. He rejected that at a hearing on Tuesday. So presumably not presumably, they set a trial date. So unless there's a new deal, there will be a trial, although it won't be for a long time.
Why? I wonder what, I mean, obviously you're not his attorney, but why reject the plea deal?
Right.
I mean,
that's a really good question. I mean, the fact that they got to the point where they have a hearing that the plea deal came up, to me indicates that his attorney thought this was a deal he should take, and he decided not to take it.
Okay.
I don't want to say, because I wasn't covering the hearing, Chip Mitchell was, but it sounds like something that maybe his attorney does think he should have taken, and he decided not to.
I'm still stuck on the text message. Like, that's exactly what I would send if I was in the Capitol. We in here, yo.
We out here.
Totally. I should say he was on medical leave from CPD on January 6th. Then he was stripped and put on suspended without pay. He's now on. He has a leave of absence.
Still a ridiculous text.
I'm not defending the text.
I want
the alleged text.
Hey, here's a question from someone who's watching us on YouTube right now. Hi.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, Kevin. Kevin's got this comment. He says, if everyone agrees that there needs to be a change on the 5th floor, why is it likely that we'll have one of the lowest mayor election turnouts come February?
Ooh.
Well, I want to just start by saying that I certainly have not said I agree there needs to be a change. I think we all, as a panel, want to say we're not weighing in on the mayoral race.
Right.
Do we know that that's going to be the lowest turnout?
That's the thing. That seems like a prediction.
It's kind of early to say.
I mean, traditionally, they're very low.
I mean, this is my first mayoral election.
Right. Traditionally, it's very low. I mean, the old adage used to be like, do people even know the name of their alderman? I think that's changing a bit more. I'm hopeful it's changing. They've, since the pandemic, it's a little easier. You can vote by mail now and everything. Maybe that helps turn out.
I wonder if Kevin's thinking lack of big names. There were a lot of names that were attached who were rumored to run, and they decided, now I'm going to sit this one out. So maybe he's thinking without those, it's like, all right.
Totally.
It is interesting. There aren't any big name challengers right now. Right. I guess there's not anybody so far that seems to be exciting people to come to the ballot box. I wonder if we'll see somebody announce,
We'll have to wait and see, Kevin. All right, that is WBEZ criminal justice reporter Patrick Smith, Carrie Shepard, who's lead producer for the daily podcast and newsletter CityCast Chicago, and Brandon Pope, host of On the Block, which airs on WCIU Channel 26. Do not go away. There's a second half of the weekly news recap coming right up. But first, inflation. It seems to be easing across the country. Is that so, Claire?
That's what we're hearing. That's the speculation. Inflation did ease last month, mostly because energy prices took a dive, which was raising the hopes for many, sounds like yours included, that the surging costs of everything from gasoline to food may have peaked. According to a Commerce Department report released today, consumer prices rose 6.3% in July from a year earlier, and that was after the biggest jump since 1982. Energy prices, though, dropped last month after surging in June. The Fed will likely impose large interest rate hikes in coming months as officials say they remain focused on taming inflation. So we'll see. And the American Library Association says attempts to ban books are on the rise across the nation, almost doubling in the last year. Most books targeted are about gender identity and race. ALA officials say they're working on a strategy to prevent the more targeted attempts. And here in Chicago, the Second Unitarian Church of Chicago was vandalized Wednesday because of its pro-abortion message on the church's outdoor sign. In a press release, the church says its sign has read, quote, "We support abortion on demand without apology." Since the overturn of Roe v. Wade, and neighbors caught video of 2 people throwing rocks at the church. More of Reset continues next, and it is Science Friday. Stick around at 1 o'clock to hear about some new salmon research. WBEZ is supported by Governor's State Center for Performing Arts, presenting Red Summer, set during the Chicago Race Riots of 1919, September 15th through 26th. Tickets at govst.edu/Red Summer.
WBEZ is supported by the Dover Foundation, the philanthropic arm of Dover, a global manufacturer headquartered in the Chicago area. Dover proudly supports efforts to benefit communities where they operate worldwide. More at dovercorporation.com/community.
The weather for today, mostly sunny this afternoon, highs in the low 80s. Right now, we've got about 74 degrees under partly sunny skies at O'Hare. Near Midway, sunny and 75. This is WBEZ.
This is Reset. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons, and you are tuned in to the weekly news recap, where we take you behind the headlines of the week's top local stories. Now, before the break, we talked about the first week of school, and we took a look at a controversial political ad, but there's a lot more to discuss.
A Chicago commission says statues of Christopher Columbus should be gone permanently.
A man has been charged in the hit and run that killed 3 men and injured a 4th outside the Jeffrey Pub in the South Shore neighborhood.
An ultra-secretive Chicago industrial mogul has quietly given $1.6 billion to the architect of the right-wing takeover of the courts.
Defense lawyers at R. Kelly's child pornography trial in Chicago are seeking to portray a key government witness as a liar and extortionist.
Our panel today is WCIU's Brandon Pope, CityCast Chicago's Carrie Shepard, and WBEZ's Patrick Smith. Panelists, let's go ahead and wave hello to the people watching us live right now on Facebook and YouTube. Hi, thank you so much. Listeners, you can head over to those WBEZ pages if you would like a more visual experience and some of Brandon and Carrie's dancing on this weekly news recap.
You got to get the shoulders out of him.
I couldn't leave him hanging.
Yeah.
All right, switching gears. Patrick, I'm looking at you. Testimony continued in R&B singer R. Kelly's Chicago trial. What did we learn this week?
Yeah, so the focus this week during the second week of R. Kelly's trial has been largely about the alleged obstruction of justice that prosecutors say Kelly committed to get his acquittal on child porn charges back in 2008. So in 2008, he went to trial in Cook County Court, was ultimately found not guilty of child porn charges. He's accused, one of the main parts of the case against him here in Chicago federal court is that he bribed people, intimidated witnesses, obstructed justice in general to get a wrongful, not guilty but acquittal.
Yeah. Including parents, correct?
Yes.
One of the,
okay. Yeah. And so that's been a big focus of this week of testimony. Today, I'm not sure if the cross-examination has wrapped up yet, but so far today it's been cross-examination of a woman who testified that she engaged in sexual acts with Kelly and a 14-year-old girl, that she filmed, and that was filmed, that she filmed Kelly engaging in sexual acts with a 14-year-old girl. Mm-hmm. She says that Kelly then paid her $250,000 to recover one of those tapes that she actually stole from him because she didn't want him to have video of her any longer. So she was,
and he paid her to be able to get it back.
Exactly. He paid her for her to get it back. Then earlier in the week, there was testimony from another person who said he made a deal. He didn't end up actually getting a full $1 million, but he made a deal with Kelly and his team to get $1 million to recover other videotapes that showed Kelly allegedly having sex with or sexually abusing young teenage girls. That was a contentious, as cross-examinations usually are, an attempt to impeach that witness as well. This busy week, I mean, every week in this trial is going to be busy. I think we're expecting it to last about 6 weeks. This week comes after last week when, as weeks tend to do, when jurors were shown videos that allegedly showed the sex acts between Kelly and the 14-year-old girl.
Jeez. Carrie, a commission formed by Mayor Lightfoot finally came out with its report about the city's statues. What were the findings?
Kind of what we, I think, predicted, not to put the Columbus statues, which were removed, the main, in Arrigo Park in Little Italy, and then in Grant Park in the middle of the night after a lot of protests around them. They said keep those in storage, and other, mostly all of the contested monuments, they said, should not go back up, the ones that have been removed. Obviously, they said, for things like structures like bridges where you cannot remove the monuments, they're part of the infrastructure. Maybe you have a plaque that acknowledges what's happening here with the colonizers. And but what's interesting is, so the mayor, formed this committee. So this was handpicked by the mayor. And now the mayor said that there needs to be, I think, another committee of the
working group.
Working group of the recommendations. So, we've all seen death by committee and a lot of things that need to change.
So her reaction to the commission's recommendations is, we need more recommendations.
We need to evaluate the recommendations. I mean, she's in a political spot, right? Like, the Italian American community has been very vocal that these statues should go back up, and then there's a huge contingent like young Black and brown people who were so active and vocal in leading this movement to bring these down, who say like, no, do not put these back up. So
yeah. There's also some money at stake, too. I mean, some of these suggestions were about like the Michigan Avenue Bridge, and the things they wanted fixed about the Michigan Avenue Bridge are like part of the infrastructure of the Michigan Avenue Bridge. So if you have to remove parts of that, you got to shut down the bridge, and that's going to take construction and manpower and money. So she's got to factor in stuff like that too for some of these monuments. There were about 40 that were flagged, right?
Yeah,
so,
40, a little more than 40. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and there, I should say that she did the commission did recommend that new works be built, like certain groups, like in Chatham, Mahalia Jackson, something down in Pilsen, I believe. For the Latino community. So they
had some ideas.
Exactly. Some funding to go to these new monuments that could be part of the public art landscape.
And Carrie, a Chicago businessman made news this week too for what's believed to be the largest ever donation to a political group in U.S. history, $1.6 billion. Who is Barre Seid?
I have no idea. Okay. I had no idea before reading this story from ProPublica, and I think it was The Lever. I'm not sure how to say this, but it was fantastic reporting. I have never heard of this person. And
anybody know Barre?
I'd like to know him.
I'm not a business reporter. He does have an interesting backstory as like I think he came as an immigrant during the Holocaust. I could be wrong on that, so forgive me if that's not the timeline. But he sort of just built this empire, this electronics empire, and he's real quiet and behind the scenes, as often a lot of people who fund the coffers for political endeavors are. But I was like, that's so much money. But the other important point, obviously, about this is that this is, and both Republicans and Democrats do this, to be clear, is like they work around the laws to make sure that there are not tax liabilities in getting all this money to quote unquote nonprofits.
What's the Marble Freedom Trust?
I think it's led by the guy who was formerly with the Federalist Society, and I think part of their platform is end abortion. I mean, no, it's other, that's a big one for them. But,
Do we know how Barre Seid makes his money?
He runs, I think it's called Trip now. It's electronics.
Oh, okay.
It's an electronics company. I think, is it Trip? I'm sorry.
Well, it's doing well.
Yes, it's very well.
Whatever it's called.
Very well. Yeah.
I'm just always fascinated when these people give these large amounts of money to these campaigns, and I'm like, that money could go to so many other things you can directly impact. Yeah, it's like you're giving it to a campaign, hoping they win so they can do some stuff, when you could just like use that money to do some stuff.
It's just like, yeah.
What do I know? I don't got no money. So.
Nobody got that kind of money.
$1.6 billion.
Sheesh.
So much money.
All right, so let's shift, Brandon, from news of a billionaire businessman to a group of housing activists camping out in an Uptown parking lot. They're trying to block a development. What's this about?
Yeah, so the old Weiss Hospital, they basically sold off their parking lot to this developer, the developer named Lincoln Property Company. They got a few developments they're doing, and there's a new high-rise that they're building in Uptown. These activists, there are 6 that are camping out, but more than that are actually protesting. They want that lot to be bought back by Weiss Hospital. And utilized for community needs, utilized for things, because their concern right now, like a lot of people's concern, is that with another high rise in the area, people are going to be forced out. Mm-hmm. People are going to not be able to live there affordably. Gentrification is going to happen. And for context here, this is a 12-story complex they're set to build, and it would only have the city mandated minimum of 8 affordable housing units. 8.
Oh, it's a 314 unit.
And
apartment complex, and only 8 would be affordable.
Only 8 have to be, and so they're going to stick with that. Now the company also has put money toward a separate housing development that goes toward homeless women and things like that. So they're trying to kind of offset it with that, but it's a bad look. So these activists, like many activists, are very concerned about the rise in rent costs. Rent costs are going up across the city, across even the suburbs right now. And so they're going to stay out there, they say, until their demands are met or until police force them out. Police have stopped by so far, talked to them, questioned them, have not kicked him out yet. So it's going to be something to watch over the next few days.
Are these renters in Uptown? Because this is a story that's been going on in Uptown for decades, right? You know,
and they've been out there since Sunday.
Yeah. So. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and between us and Block Club Chicago, Joe Ward, who's been doing reporting on this, we've been trying to reach Wise, not Wise, the developer. They're called Lincoln Property Company. Haven't heard back. Surprise, surprise. We reached out to Wise Hospital as well and their parent company. A representative did confirm that they've closed the sale on the parking lot, so it is no longer in their control. And planned sale of the hospital itself to Resilience Healthcare, that's not completed.
And that property company still has to get through some permits for construction. They can't even break ground yet. Like there's a crane permit they have to get, things like that. So that's not a done deal either.
But this action, overall, it fits into the landscape of affordable housing in that neighborhood.
Oh, it's an ongoing conversation. Absolutely. And Uptown's been one of those places that people have targeted as, let's put a new high-rise here and here and here. And it's also a neighborhood where people need affordable housing. So,
oh my gosh. I lived there almost 20 years ago. This was a conversation.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the borders is going to change everything. The borders closed down, you know. Yeah. Right. And there's a lot of social service agencies in Uptown. It's an extremely diverse neighborhood as well. Yeah. This is a pretty consistent conversation there.
Absolutely.
This is Reset. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. We are digging into the headlines for our weekly news recap with WBEZ criminal justice reporter Patrick Smith, Carrie Shepard of CityCast Chicago, and Brandon Pope, host of On the Block, which airs on WCIU Channel 26. All right, let's turn to something very different. Police have charged a man in the hit and run that killed 3 people and injured a 4th. This was outside South Shore's Jeffrey Pub back on August 14th. What do we know about this person and his motives, Patrick?
Yeah, so police and prosecutors say that 34-year-old Tavis Dunbar drove his car at almost 60 miles per hour into a group of 4 people outside of the pub on August 14th.
I still refuse to watch that video.
I think you're making the right decision, frankly. Anybody who doesn't have to for professional reasons, I would avoid it. They say it's interesting is probably not the right word, but there's a lot that we still don't know about this. They say that, according to authorities, that this happened right after a fight had happened just outside of Jeffrey Pub, and that witnesses heard somebody shouting, "I got something for you," after that fight, and then right before this crash. However, police say they don't have evidence that Dunbar was involved in the fight. They don't have a reason to believe that this was a hate crime. The Jeffrey Pub is a gay bar on the South Side. So you asked what his motives are, and we really still don't know. At least according to authorities, we really don't know what motivated this. If it was the fight, even though he wasn't directly involved, if it was something else. According to prosecutors, the car's black box, which records information about the car before, during, and after a crash, it showed that he was going 59 miles per hour, or the driver, allegedly, Tavis Dunbar, was going 59 miles per hour, that the gas pedal was pressed almost all the way to the floorboard. There was no attempt to stop before striking these 4 people. According to prosecutors, he went to a friend's house after, told this woman that people were trying to get him, and he just barely got away, and he didn't have time to stop. According to authorities, the evidence just does not support that, so we still don't know a lot about what motivated this horrific attack.
It would seem like this person was on a mission, though.
Yeah, that was my first thought.
Feels targeted.
Yeah, Jeffrey's Pub is one of the oldest gay bars in the country, and my first thought, sadly, was this a hate crime? But you say the authorities say there is no indication of that right now.
They have not ruled that out, but they say they don't have any indication that that's what was going on here.
Wow.
Lightening the mood, sports.
Oh, yeah, the sports report. Dun, 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 dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Turning now to Brendan Pope. Brendan?
Whammy!
Well, the goal of being the WNBA's first back-to-back champions in, 20 years, that's still alive for the Chicago Sky.
Still very much alive. So they're going to play the Connecticut Sun in the semifinals starting Sunday at 7 p.m. The WNBA changed their playoff format, so now it's a best-of-5 series. Previously, it was a best-of-3. The Sky, they swept the regular season series with the Connecticut Sun. And this is a Sun team that has some consistent athletes on it that can average a triple-double steal at any point. You got Natisha Heidemann, Alyssa Thomas, Jonquel Jones, all doing really well. But the Sky are still favored by Vegas odds, about 18-point favorites in that. So that's pretty. That's pretty large there.
Ooh.
So according to some Vegas odds, so we're going to see how that goes. Best of 5 series. The Sky. You got to remember when they won their championship, they were not the number 1 seed in the WNBA. They weren't really that great in the regular season. They stumbled, but once they got to the playoffs, they caught lightning. We're going to see if that still happens. They got a lot of the same makeup. They got to step up their scoring for sure. But, hey, the pieces are there. Candace Parker playing better than she ever has. So they're ready for a title defense.
No injuries right now? Everybody's in tip-top shape?
There's been some concerns around Kalia Copper, but she's doing well so far. So
yeah, she had an injury in game 1, I think.
She did, but she should be good to go for this series.
Is this could be Candace Parker's last year, dare I say? That's
Candace
the speculation.
Parker, she said that she has been viewing this season as if it is her last season. So I know, right? She's done so much. I mean, just to think, she came back to her hometown, to this franchise. Didn't have to do that, right? And took them over the top. And if they could do it again, what a way to cap off a career as a back-to-back champion.
That was so fun. That was so fun last year. We all needed it, and it came at the best time.
One of the best parts, so I talked to head coach James Wade a few days ago, and he said what he's enjoyed is he's seeing more people in the stands, especially more men in the stands.
Nice.
Excellent.
And that's what we need. More people supporting women's sports.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah, my goal, hopefully all men at the next. No, I'm just kidding.
No, Patrick, wrong answer.
Sorry, Wintrust Arena, pack it up.
All right,
Sunday at 7.
Before I kick you out.
Great place to be.
Before I kick you out of this studio, any stories that piqued your interest this week that maybe we didn't get and maybe was not on everyone's radar? Anyone?
Nick Cannon. Why does he keep having kids?
Baby number 10.
I think he's like preparing an army for a war we don't know about yet. So we need to really start talking to him.
Well, both of the things I'm thinking of would really bring down the mood. So, Carrie, you go first.
Never mind, Patrick. Never mind.
Mine does too. Actually, we're covering the boat safety on the accidents in the playpen.
Chicago scene. Yeah,
we're covering that on.
That has been a issue that's been happening every year with that Black Sea and Boat Party. I was there for that. Mm-hmm. It really there's got to be some sort of clear parameter set because this happens way too often.
It does not seem safe. I mean, Patrick and I know because we walk past it after work or Navy Pier, not because we go to the playpen, sadly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does not seem safe. Yeah.
Well, for folks watching us on the live stream, I want to say a special thank you once again. And I want to shout out Richard, who left us this very nice comment. He said, great program. Fun to watch you guys making radio.
Well, thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
I love
Radio's fun.
We love giving you this peek behind the scenes. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
We've been talking with WBEZ criminal justice reporter Patrick Smith, Carrie Shepard, who's lead producer for the daily podcast and newsletter CityCast Chicago, and Brandon Pope, host of On the Block, which airs on WCIU Channel 26. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great weekend, all.
Thanks, Sasha. This was great. Thanks.
Coming up, there has been a push to increase enrollment in career and technical education, otherwise called CTE, here in Chicago. Reporter Mila Kumpalova joins us to tell us more about it. But first, COVID-19 vaccine maker Moderna is suing its main competitors. Here's Claire.
Yes, Moderna is suing Pfizer and BioNTech, accusing the rivals of copying its technology in order to make their own vaccine. The suit filed today says Pfizer and BioNTech's vaccine commonality infringes on patent. Moderna filed several years ago protecting its technology behind the preventative shot Spikevax. A Pfizer spokeswoman said the drug maker would, quote, vigorously defend against any allegations in the case. Also, the U.S. Secret Service said today that it's recovered $286 million in fraudulently obtained pandemic loans and is returning the money to